Hello everybody, today's movie review is going to be Chronicle. Chronicle is a movie directed by Trank. You may know him as he's directing the upcoming Fantastic Four reboot, which I'm pretty excited for. I think it could be really good. Get that pencil out of the way. But yeah, this is a found footage superhero thriller type movie. It was a pretty interesting concept, and I gotta say, I was interested in watching this movie for a while now, but I found out it was found footage and I was like, I'm not sure. But then I thought, it's getting these good reviews for a reason, so I don't know. And I watched it, and I have to say, I really enjoyed this movie. Now I'll just give some backstory about me on found footage. I never liked the concept of found footage, to be honest, because, I mean, I've seen some really cheap found footage horror movies like this one called Exists, which is honestly one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. And then the first Paranormal Activity bored me to death. Like, literally, I watched the first half of it and I was just, no, this is so boring. Nothing is happening. It's not scary. It's just boring. I couldn't do it. So I kind of turned it off. And, you know, because of all those, like, I kind of had this really negative view on found footage. Because, for one, it's so incredibly cheap to make. Like, for most movies that have million-dollar budgets, found footage movies are, like, maybe a few thousand or so, like 10, 100. Not a whole lot goes into making found footage movies, especially found footage horror movies. But this one, on the other hand, it's actually well made. Like, first off, the quality is that of like a normal camera, and you know, you could make the excuse like, well, normal kids wouldn't have access to this kind of camera. Well, we see the camera he has access to, and it's a pretty good camera. So, and even if it's not the same kind of cameras as, you know, they use in, like, professional filming and stuff, it's still a camera which I can buy, like, good image quality for. And even then, sometimes when this particular camera that the guy has isn't used, then they use other stuff like security camera footage and, like, iPads that are just there and they happen to be recording at the time. Or maybe, like, some kind of satellite footage or other cameras and stuff. And I really like that. It's really interesting and a really clever use of the found footage stuff. Like, this movie could have been just not found footage and just found footage on its own. And I think it was really well executed because I really like all that and it really complements what this movie is about, which I should probably talk about. It's about these three kids who, you know, they're at a party one night. The main kid is this guy named Andrew. He's this really introverted, kind of not antisocial kid, kind of like me in middle school. And he gets a camera and he decides to record everything in his life. And eventually he, his cousin Drew, and this guy they met called Steven, I believe his name is, it's been a while since I watched this movie, they find a hole in the ground. And apparently there was this meteorite inside, and when they touch it, they get telekinesis. And they start using their powers and, you know, realizing other stuff like, oh, they realize they can fly. Because they just lift themselves up and they like, can like do magic tricks at a talent show and like make it look real and stuff, and you know, other really cool stuff. And it was really clever, and they can even lift the camera up so they have better cinematography because of that. And that was a really good aspect also with the telekinesis stuff. Like, it looks really cool. And when they lift stuff up, it's pretty awesome. Like, some early bits when they're small items, you can kind of tell it's CGI, but towards the end, it gets better as they do, like, more larger things with their powers, and it looks really cool. And, like, I really like all these actors. All these actors really sell me on what they're doing. And, you know, it really tells me that they're struggling to cope with their powers, because some of them, they make mistakes, and especially Andrew, and, you know, they have to learn how to cope with them and cover them up. They're trying to make rules for themselves, but they don't always want to follow them. And they're thinking maybe they can fly away and stuff. Because, you know, they don't lead the best life. Like, Andrew's mother is dying of cancer, and he has a stepfather who's very abusive, and he's pretty awful. But it is pretty fun to see Andrew, fight against his stepfather with his powers. Like, eventually when that does happen, you know, he knows he can do it, and he just stands up to him. That's pretty cool. I really like that usage. And, you know, the way the plot builds is pretty cool. It's got a few philosophical messages also in there somewhere about, like, you know, like power stuff of the human race and all that, and you know, evolutionary things. It's really cool, and you know, I don't want to give away like what happens that, you know, really makes it worthy of these themes, but they're pretty cool, I have to say. You know, it is really interesting seeing what happens to these characters after they get the telekinesis. Like, are they going to use it responsibly, or are they just going to do their own things? And, you know, some characters, you know, were not as lucky as some of the others, I will say. But, you know, it is really cool. Like, everything, like, it really happens to them, you know, it really makes sense that it would go to some people's heads and they would do stuff like that. And, you know, a lot of other things, like, you know, he's beat up by bullies at school, so he can, like, use his powers to, like, defend himself. Sometimes he goes a little too far, kind of like Peter Parker in the Spider-Man movies, namely the first Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man, where he kind of just uses his powers to beat up Flash. But, you know, I'll talk about that in a little bit. But whatever. It's really cool seeing what they do with their powers. The cinematography is great. I really like the soundtrack. And the final 30 minutes of this movie was really cool. Like, you know, it's really cool because I mentioned this is kind of a superhero-esque movie. Kind of like its undertones. I don't know. It's not really a direct superhero movie. It's kind of like Unbreakable in that, you know, it's got implications of being a superhero movie, but it's not directly about a superhero. And, you know, the last 30 minutes is really awesome. You know, it's got really clever uses of cameras and, you know, stuff that goes on. It's really emotional also, and, you know, kind of heartfelt. But anyway, that's cool. I really like that. There's pretty much not too much I didn't enjoy with this movie. It's a well-made movie that was fun to watch, clever use of cinematography, and a whole lot else. I don't really have that many complaints with this movie, other than I wish it was a little longer. This was like an hour and a half long. And, you know, I feel it was a good length, and they put exactly enough that they needed in there. But, you know, it wouldn't have helped to do a little more, but whatever. Yeah, Josh Trank has impressed me, and I'm still looking forward to his Fantastic Four movie, because I've heard good things about it so far from, like, the makers. And yeah, I'm definitely going to see that and maybe review it with a friend, I don't know, whatever. So, Chronicle is a movie that is going to get 92%. Not a whole lot wrong with it, just wish, you know, it was a little more, but whatever. Great movie, check it out, if you don't have any faith in Josh Trank. And no, those things about him doing all those bad things on the Fantastic Four side are actually not true. I looked it up. It's just stories and exaggerations. Okay, whatever. Goodbye, Home Slice, and I'll see you in the next review. Ooh, they're rising. You can't see my hand. You can't. Yeah, I don't have telekinesis. But it would be cool, wouldn't it?